We'll be back from the break now. Let's head to the western part of Uganda in Mbarara. As due to delays in road construction, the government may be obliged to terminate the further imposed comprehensive ban on the multiplex detached JV construction company following failure to expedite the construction works in Mbarara City. Currently, the company is still addressing allegations of utilizing unskilled labor and a burden to clear up contract damages.
3 roads, namely Major Victor Bwana Road measuring 0.95 kilometers, Cult Road measuring 0.65 kilometers and Stanley Road measuring 0.78 kilometers have experienced delays in their construction under the Uganda Support to Municipal Infrastructure Development Initiatives. These roads were contracted for a period of 1 year at a total cost of 23 billion shillings to the government.
Those ones have been having problems since the beginning of the project. And we have less hopes that that project will be finished.
We are not complaining about the quality of work, but we are complaining about the time that he has spent on a project.
Authorities in Mbarara claim that after requesting multiplex extension, Multiplex has entirely failed to carry out the duty for which they were hired, and yet the contract is set to expire on the 18th of next month. Leaders complain that the city's economic, climate and transportation have both been negatively impacted by the delays in building these highways.
When a project stays for long, people are inconvenienced. Like people accessing their businesses, people doing their businesses, people are inconvenienced. And I want to thank the people of Mbarara that they have not gone so violent to the contractor.
While addressing the progress of the implementation of various activities under the Uganda Support to Municipal Initiative Development, officials from this program and the World Bank were left fuming over the delays of this contractor.
From what we see, there is very little that can be done because it doesn't look like it's well set to complete the work within the time available.
All the contractual extensions have been given to the contractor. I think there are up to 3 extensions which have been given, but unfortunately, even with the extensions, the contractor has not been able to complete work in time.
Isaac Mutenyo, the project manager of the Uganda Support Municipal Infrastructure Development, says that they got reports that the company employs unskilled personnel that are unable to work. Besides, even the engineers it employs do not stay to undertake their tasks.
Time has run out, and now it is under what we call liquidated damages, meaning that it is now the contractor to pay the client 0.1% until it reaches 10%, then the work stops.
Government has awarded contracts to 3 contractors to 3 companies to tarmac various roads in Mbarara City. But while other 2 are progressing well on their contracts, Multiplex has completely failed and is currently paying liquidated damages of 0.1% back to the client. This company could also face total ban according to the government and World Bank officials.
Qualified staff are not fully deployed. Where they are fully deployed, they don't stay long. There's a high turnover of staff, especially the engineers. We have also seen mobilization of equipment, not to the standard that we expect.
Efforts to get a comment from Multiplex Ditako were futile as they declined to comment on these accusations. Catherine Mugerwa, Bronia Katsime, Smart24 TV, Business Today.
All right, now we turn our focus back onto the Labor Day celebrations as we now get to understand the lessons from Uganda's labor market. Now, as Uganda does join the rest of the world to commemorate the International Labor Day, there are very huge concerns around Uganda's employment sector. Better yet, the minimum wage, which has caused a very huge fuse among its legislators and, of course, the other employees, both in the formal sector and the informal sector. Now, joining us this evening, we have Timothy Kaja from the KTA Advocate to discuss this and more in regards to Uganda's labor market. Good evening, Council. Many thanks for joining us.
Good evening, and very good evening.
Looking at Uganda's Labor's Day celebrations, I will definitely kick off with my first question of the day. When you look at the dominance of oral contracts in Uganda, that is mainly in the formal sector, Are we really safe as a country when it comes to the negotiations and the working environment and security of the job, or we should be very worried? Are we safe, or we should be very worried?
Firstly, just start with the facts. The oral contracts are permissible in Uganda as long as they don't go beyond 500 Uganda shillings. That is $500,000. So if it's $500,000, you can do that orally. But I'm afraid $500,000, then you'll have to put it in writing. The best recommended practice is that you have all contracts in writing, because in those contracts, it's not only the payment, but also the rights that you enjoy and the protection that you enjoy as an employee. Things that include data protection, things that include the safety of your employment, how you terminated, what can you do when you terminate. So the best practice is that we have contracts in writing. But nonetheless, we also have to acknowledge the fact that in the economy where we operate, because of the huge number of people looking for jobs, you may not have.
Okay, and of course, Council, we are definitely going to be getting back with Council, and of course, he's trying to break down a little bit when it comes to how our job market runs. And by the look of things, and in his brief presentation, he does tell you that when you look at the oral contracts in Uganda, they do look like they are the order of the day, simply because when you look at most of the jobs in Uganda, wage or salaries around 500,000. Council, I don't know if you can get me, because I want to bring you to another sector here, briefly into the sports sector. When you look at the non-binding contracts in the sports sector, in Uganda's sports sector, for example, Uganda's football body is actually facing a very huge challenge when it comes to the salaries of these football players and turning the league into a professional one. But where does the loop lie in regards to the fact that we have a lot of non-binding contracts in Uganda's football contingent? Yes,
That is a pain point, in that we have what many people would look at probably informal sector, but now it's turning professional. And that includes sport, where many of these contracts are not respected. And that is a very, very big pain point. It's solved when these athletes form their own unions. Now, these unions can bargain with the football clubs and the football association to ensure, even in other sports disciplines, even if rugby or basketball, players can jointly bargain for better rights. And for those in football, they are lucky that if you use an agent to get into a new club, then agent and that club onto the FIFA clearinghouse. That means going forward, at the start of the next football season, you won't be a club won't be allowed to have an athlete without having a contract in writing. So for them, kudos. For the other disciplines such as basketball, rugby, netball, it's still a long way to go. The only way, the easy way out is if they get into unions and they can collectively bargain for their better rights without being attacked by any of their employees.
Council, let's have a look at the Employment Act and other legal provisions within the country. Do you think they are the ones largely to blame when it comes to the rampant cases of human trafficking, especially in the field of labor externalization?
Yes, our current act that was enacted in 2006 had gaps and maybe did not clearly see the impact, the level or the magnitude of labor exploitation of labor, and that is a gap that has been abused over time. The Ministry of Labor has come up with different means to kind of reduce this gap. It has come up with a website, a clearing system to have these companies cleared and have these companies checked by the public. For example, if you have a company that is offering to take you to maybe the Middle East to work, you can easily go online on the ministry website and verify whether this company is genuine or not. But clearly, the act that we are operating under did not address that efficiently. Subsequently, the ministry had regulations, but what employees should know in Uganda is that the Act is undergoing amendment currently. So in the new amendment, these gaps are being addressed, and hopefully, once put to test, the playing field will be better to protect many of these people that export to work in different countries across the globe.
Okay, by the look of things, as you've mentioned that it is actually being amended, or they're actually looking at the provisions in there. This also brings me to a question where I want to ask, do you think we've been fast enough to adapt to the current market dynamics? Because when you look at the fact that labor externalization was an oversight in the 2006 Employment Act.
I wouldn't say we've been fast enough, but it's not only in employment. Usually follow practice. People, even if it's technology, even if it's sport, even if it's many things, shortly after a practice has been established. So a law comes into force. Of course, exploit the gaps and try to make as much profit as possible. If you look at things like mobile money, we've used them over time, but the law that came in 2020, labor or employment not being different, the law has not been fast enough. What we can do is that if we identify the gaps, then we have to make a means to address the gaps that are in the current law. But just answer you, the law isn't really that fast enough to catch up with what people do, but employment is not any different. Many things, the law has had to play catch up.
Now we have an issue in the country here when it comes to default payments, especially from the employer's side. When you look at it, under what conditions is default on payment guarded on the employer's side?
Now, if on default payments, now it comes from question number one: do you have a contract in writing or not? If you have a contract in writing, you should be able to address what happens in case of a default. Many times, and specifically maybe because of the large pool of employees available on the market, when the defaults happen, you have to just stick it to your side and be patient with your employer. Because yes, take it or leave it, the economic situation. So you have to practically have to at least address it. If you are the employee or you are the employer and you know that these deficits are coming up, should be able to have these discussions with your employees so that you manage the expectations. But if you're an employee and deficits are coming constantly without any word from your employer, then you have to also force a discussion with your employer. In separate sector, including sports, interestingly, is that where you've gone about 2 to 3 months without any payment or communication of why the payment is delaying or when it's due, then you have the right to terminate that contract for just cause. It's deemed that you have a just cause for you to terminate your employment contract, and so you can walk away. But it's not that practical because you all want that job. So the best way to go over it is to have this discussion. From an employer, don't wait the situation to get out of hand. Go to the employees, tell them, and then you help manage your expectations. And if you're receiving this word from your employer, also try to understand so that you meet each other and work as a team to survive in this harsh economy.
Now, when we look at the employer's side, there is some incidents whereby you get to realize some businesses are either bankrupt or most of them are actually winding up because of a stream of areas that are spread across months, and businesses have to meet all these operational costs. How can a mutual understanding be between the employers and employees? Because you get to realize at times the cost of running business becomes really high, and the money to pay these employees is nowhere to be seen.
Yes. Now, the practice past or during even the COVID world is that if you have them in writing, you have to negotiate contracts on goodwill, and you have to have candid discussions with your employees and renegotiate these contracts, because not only are you paying the employees, but you have to remit NSSF, you have to pay URA, which may not need to know what problems you're facing at the moment. So to cut the burden of your remittances to NSSF and also your burden to URA. You have to renegotiate the money that you pay your employees. And if the employees understand the situation, they should be amicable or agreeable to this. Now, when you're changing the contract, aka renegotiating it, is that you'll have to know how long does, because say this contract or this down payment will take place or will be in effect for about 2 or 1 year, so that you can be able to find your economic footing again, and then probably after that, post the hardships, then you can go back to your original contracts.
Right now, do you believe the minimum wage would be an answer for our country? Because when you look at it, should population be hopeful about this legal framework that is actually aimed at promoting positivity at work? But in that same line, do you think the minimum wage, as a huge discussion in Uganda, what will it solve? And is it a realistic approach to Uganda's reality?
The fact is that minimum wage is a debate that has been here for long, and as Uganda, there is no option but to take it on. What we can discuss is how do we take it on. We can learn from different countries, including our neighbors in Tanzania and Kenya. You may, for example, look at Tanzania, they identify a sector and then apportion a minimum wage. For example, if it's maybe it's education, so that for teachers, this is the minimum wage. If it's for engineering, this is the minimum wage. If it's in journalism, this is the minimum wage. Then for our friends in Kenya, they also add to it the location of the employment station. For example, if you're...
all right, Council. Lastly, as we are summing up with this discussion, sorry to cut you short, we're kindly running out of time. When you look at the relevance allowances in the country, do you think they have been respected enough locally when it comes to our working sector, the allowances and everything? And is there a possibility of overturning the fact that some companies do not respect the idea of this?
Severance allowances are hardly respected here. And partly because neither do the employees know that these things exist. It's only those who take on the battle to the industrial court. But black respecting, it starts from the employees knowing that these things are available, then they can fight for them.
Many thanks for joining us, Council, and a happy Labour's Day to you, as well as a good night to you.
Thank you.
All right, and that is Council Timothy Kaja from the KTA Advocates, giving us a little bit more of the Labour Day lessons and what we should learn and employ into Uganda's labour market. But besides that, as we continue with our Labour Day recommendations, now, despite acknowledging government efforts and appreciating work emphasis of the workers plus labourers towards socio-economic growth, the civil society organizations have pointed out isolated labor sectors and the increasing abuses as highlights of poor administration by the Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development. Now, thus, instant redress has been called upon to remedy the dire situation.
And commercial investment schemes where workers are hired without formal contracts, leading to job insecurity, limited access to remedies for human rights abuses. Additionally, employees may face delays or lack of compensation in the event of workplace accidents. CSOs such as Siatin Uganda, Coalition of Human Rights Defenders, and Voices for Labour want government to investigate the state of workers in commercial investment schemes such as factories, flower farms, and plantations to enforce redress.
Our concerns are informed by the fact that increasingly there are a number of labor rights abuses experienced especially by vulnerable groups like women, youth, and people with disabilities. This is partly because there are glaring gaps in labor rights, policies, and administration of the existing laws.
If only the media could even just get a little bit concerned and you do some investigations in the about the living conditions in the flower farms, you will see a manifestation of modern day slavery. There's one of the flower farms, and I don't think I can even apologize for this, in Gayaza. Maybe it's a going concern, but when you go in that flower farm and you listen to a few workers, you'd even want to shed tears. You'd even think, maybe this is not Uganda. In that flower farm, there are these workers who do spraying. They spray in the greenhouses. Now, the protective, they're supposed to wear protective equipment when they're spraying, but the protective equipment got worn out, so they were told to buy their own gunboots and protective equipment, and they can't afford it. And according to the company policy, you're not supposed to spray in your clothes that you've gone. So what these workers do, they actually spray naked. They spray in those greenhouses naked. Now, if you're talking about, for example, quantity over quality, and someone is in a greenhouse spraying your flowers, naked.
Uganda's legal employment provisions have to date failed to address one crucial element, the minimum wage. The workers' situation has further been worsened by the untenable 1984 enactment of 6,000 shillings as minimum wage. Despite economic shifts and demands, this hasn't been reviewed, thus exposing workers to gross exploitation and income inequality, although the Labour Ministry observes otherwise, as illustrated today during the Labour Day celebrations.
Our last minimum wage, just like the previous speaker said, was last set in 1984 at 6,000 per month. And it was even just for a few sectors. It wasn't for everyone. Now, the cost of living has continued rising up. We are just coming from COVID-19, whereas the government put up some recovery strategies. The strategies still only favor investors. Workers are always treated as in the periphery. And when looking at the development of an economy, you cannot ignore the labor market.
The poor administration in the country has resulted in the isolation of the labor force, which according to CSOs is situated within respective ministries. Administration and restructuring of Gender and Labor Ministry has ultimately been recommended. Additionally, it is crucial to highlight that the Industrial Court of Uganda has been noted as needed to expedite labor dispute resolutions.
Youths, children, disabled, elderly, culture, youth, social development. Are you getting my point? Yeah. So you find that the labor issue does not come out as something tangible. So you get important component of the country economy and you mix it in something which is not related. Now you find the Minister of Labor and the others, they are looking for money for gender. They are looking for funding for other priority. It's only on Labor Day when you see everybody is running. You now go to Namutumba, everybody will be there. All the cars will be there. But when you talk about inspection of labor, inspection of industries, you have seen workers with the hands cut, fingers cut off. Few days ago, workers have died in a factory. But the Minister of Labor has never come out with any statement clarifying on that.
The 2006 Employment Act owns a labor externalization loop that has recently been considered for resolution through the Employment Amendment Bill that was recently passed. Typically, it hasn't been well regulated and many individuals have lost lives in the Arabian Peninsula. Considerations for a labor attaché have been put forward and the Labor Ministry tasked to be responsive to the needs of the people in the society.
When they are just recruiting them, they train them. After training them, where the point of departure, then point of destination, where they are going, who is employing them, you have all this in the system. You must have another person in those countries, especially Middle East, who is monitoring.
The labor
attaché. Who is monitoring these workers at the embassy. Where are they going to work? Whom are they working for? And what type of job are they doing? Their safety in that country, the language, the culture, All these things must be put in what? In perspective. So these are some of the things that we want reforms in ministry as far as it's concerned. Because Ministry of Labour, as we stand today, is Katogo.
There is growing demand to fix the several shortcomings, for example, investment-related policy frameworks that have failed to protect economic, social, and cultural rights. The recently amended Investment Code Act of 2019 cited to omit requirements for human rights impact assessments, performance measures, and due diligence. Such and more are revisions expected to aid labor protection. Runana Habwe, Smart24 TV, Business Today.
All right, now that report brings us to the end of Business Today, but first, let's have a rewind of our top stories.
In Business Today, civil society organization demand for immediate action from Labour Ministry to remedy employment shortfalls. Government promises remedy. Temple Hills Makerere University's engineering department embark on industrial linkage to equip and support labour uptake. And Semliki's Empire Hot Springs offers commendable tourism pool, extra visitor members attributed to geological wonders held therein.
Thank you very much indeed for being part of tonight's broadcast. I'm Jerome Paul Sonko with Winnie Buyinze Nakauchi on for the sign language interpretation. Till tomorrow, have yourselves a wonderful Labour's Day. Good evening.